Hello everyone and welcome. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use ambient sounds to create some interactive soundscapes into our environment. We're going to use sequences, modifiers, and events to create background music, sound areas, and sound events in our game. So in this project, I'm using Gaia to generate the terrain, CTS to enhance the terrain textures, Gina to spawn all of my entities that I have in my environment, such as trees and buildings. I'm using Path Painter to create paths for my agents to walk along. And I'm also using a bunch of other assets. So the assets that I'm utilizing in my game is Aquas for the water. I'm using Aura for the volumetric lighting, as well as the skybox. I'm using GPU Instancer to optimize my environment. And last but not least, the characters used in my environment are courtesy of Infinity PBR. All the documentation to do with ambient sounds can actually be found within the project. If you go to Procedural Worlds, go to Ambient Sounds, go to Documentation, you'll find that ambient sounds documentation there. So let's spruce up this project by adding ambient sounds. To do this, I'm going to start by opening up Window, go to Procedural Worlds, select Ambient Sounds, and you'll see the Ambient Sounds Manager. When you open up the Ambient Sounds Manager for the first time, it'll ask you to create an Ambience Manager. And what this does is create a script that attaches to the camera in your scene, so that it can manage all of the sounds that are going to be played throughout the game. So let's click on Create Ambience Manager, and the window will now present you with these settings. The Ambient Sounds Manager has attached a script to our main camera in our scene, which is called the Ambience Manager. The Ambience Manager comes with a few settings, such as setting the global playback speed and setting a global volume. The beauty about having global volume and playback speed as a variable in a script is the fact that we can animate it throughout our scene if we wanted to. For example, if we have UI in our scene and we want to switch between UI, you can actually animate this to increase the volume levels when you click play. So the next thing I want to show you is inside of the Ambient Sounds Manager, it'll say that there's no spatializer plugin selected. By default, Unity has one called the Resonance Audio. If you select this as your spatializer, we now have a way for us to include spatial sound. If you want to install another spatializer, you can install Microsoft's one, which comes with the Mixed Reality plugin, or you can install the Oculus one, which comes with any of the Oculus packages. I'm going to go ahead and install the Windows one by going to Window, Package Manager, and installing the Windows Mixed Reality plugin. Once you have the package installed, if you go back to the Ambient Sounds Manager, another option will open up, which is the Microsoft Spatializer. And you can easily switch between them. Looking onto the manager settings, you'll notice the same variables that we had inside of the script. These are actually the exact same values, and when you modify the Ambient Sounds Manager, it also modifies the script. This is just so that you have a central place for you to edit these, along with other settings, such as sequences, values, events, and sync groups. So first off, what is a sequence? So a sequence is a file that contains a series of clips and rules that specify how the clips should be played. So already we have a few sequences that come with ambient sounds, and these are the ones that come standard with the package. You can take a look at the demo that comes with ambient sounds. The demo comes with its own set of sequences that you can see in action within this scene. If you want to test each one of these sequences and find out what they sound like, you'll have to be in play mode. And once you're in play mode, this option will be available to you for each one of the sequences. So let's go over to play mode. I'm going to attach the Ambient Sounds Manager to the side panel of my Unity editor. When you're in play mode, the Ambient Sounds Manager will have a new tab that's available to you called Monitor. If I play one of my sequences, such as background music nature, and click play, you'll notice an option that's opened up, which is the current sequence that's playing. You have the ability to mute it and unmute it for testing. It'll also show you the volume level of what the sequence is currently playing at. So if I stop the music from playing, the volume level will decrease and fade out. I want to add this sequence as my global sequence for my game, so that when the game plays, it'll play this at the start. To do this, you'll remember that in the main camera, we had the Ambience manager, and it has a list of global sequences. At the moment, the list is empty. This list can also be found inside of the Ambient Sounds Manager. If you scroll all the way down in Sequences, there's an option called Global Sequences, and you can add it right here. So if I click on the plus symbol, I'm going to click and drag the background game music into here. And then click play. And you can start to hear the sound in the background peering in, as well as the monitor telling you what volume level it's at. So far, we were successfully able to attach a global sequence to our game, which is our nature music. But now I want to show you how to simply adjust the volume level of this by using a modifier. So a modifier is a file that you attach to a sequence, and this file lets you adjust certain things such as clips, volumes, playback speed, and so on. A modifier also gives you the ability to set up requirements so that these modifications will only be taking effect once the requirements have been met. So looking at requirements, the requirements will ask whether it's an event requirement, value requirement, or both. You can set up events and values within the tabs provided, but we'll get more into these later in the video. First off, let's see if we can attach this to our sequence and check if the volume level reduces to 75%. So go to our background game music, nature, and we're going to attach the modifier to the modifiers section of the sequence. Simply click the plus symbol and attach the modifier as follows. Now that our modifier is attached, we can now play our game and we'll notice whether or not our sounds are changed. So looking at our monitor, you'll notice that the volume level has dropped a little bit. And that's because our modifier is actually telling the audio, the sequence, to drop to 75%. You can change this and notice that the volume level dips live. So they're definitely connected. So as you can see, adding background music to our game using ambient sounds is really easy compared to what we would have had to do, which is using Unity's default audio source and setting play on awake. Even if you did have that set up, you still don't have enough control over it. So let's delve into what a sequence actually has and what benefits it gives us as compared to Unity's default audio source. So let's have a look at the background music nature sequence. In this sequence, we've got 4 clips attached to it. So this sequence is simply just randomizing the order in which they're played, and it does this by playing them one after the other. There is also a lot of other tools that you have available to you here, but if you want to learn more about what each one does, you can just hover over them. If you want to create your own sequence, you can right-click in the project files, go to Create, Procedural Worlds, Ambient Sounds, and you'll see Sequence right there. So I have a rock monster from Infinity PBR, and I want to make it growl randomly every time you walk near it. And to achieve this, I'm going to use this new sequence as my growl sequence. Next, I need to attach a few clips to this sequence, and I'm going to go to a free audio site in order for me to get these clips. So on the Procedural Worlds website, there's a list of over 200 free assets that you can download, and there's a few websites in here as well. If you scroll down to music and sound, one of the most popular websites is freesound.org. I'm going to use this to find some growl sounds. So I'm going to search up growl. And there's a few growls that are on this website. I really like these sounds, and I'm going to download each one of them. So I've downloaded, renamed, and imported the files into a new folder I created called Audio and Clips. I've placed all of them into here. So if I go to my sequence called Growl, I'm going to attach each one of these to here. And just like the other sequence, I'm going to randomize the order. Now, in order to test this, I'm going to have to mute the other sound. Go to my sequence and click play. And it definitely appears to be playing randomly. But what I want to do next is I want to have a minimum and maximum delay. So between 3 and 5. That's a lot better. And now I'm going to show you how to apply this to the character. So when the player goes near the character, I want the audio to fade in and get louder the closer you get near it. Usually when you're creating things like this in Unity, you would have to create a script and calculate the fall off yourself. Fortunately, Ambient Sounds actually comes with a tool, and that's called an audio area. An audio area can be created by right-clicking on the character, go to Procedural Worlds, Ambient Sounds, and you'll have the option to create an audio area. An audio area is this little box that appears here, and what it represents is where the sound is going to be the loudest. At the moment, the loudest it's going to be is when the character walks within the square. I'm going to increase it to 10 by 10 by 10. And now this is where the sound is going to be the loudest. I also want to create a fall off, and that's going to be 5 by 5 by 5. And this graphically represents the fall off. So I need to attach the sequence to this so it knows what sequence to play. And that happens to be our growl sequence. And that's it. So if I go and play our game, you won't hear the growl sound at the start, but if I get closer and closer to the enemy, you can start to hear the growl. And you can see in the monitor that the growl is indeed falling off. So earlier in the video, we were looking at modifiers and how modifiers can have requirements associated with them in order to make modifications to certain sequences. Now, if you're looking really closely into sequences, you'll also notice that sequences have requirements as well. Sequences can have certain requirements tied to them so that they can run based on those requirements. Now, in this case, I'm going to see if I can attach a requirement to the growl, which is an anger level, so that based on the anger level, if the anger level is above 50%, you'll start to hear the character growl. So to do this, I'm going to set up a value requirement, and the value is going to be called anger. I'm going to get the anger to be from 1 and 0.5. So if you want to see if this works, you can switch over to the Values tab and you'll notice a new value has been created. By default, there's one called Time of Day, and if you want to see how this works, you can check it out in the demo, and the demo should show you how certain sequences are affected by time of day. That's basically it. I can go into my game, and straight away you'll notice that our value is appearing inside the monitor. We can change this value live, and it will adjust the rules that are applied to it automatically. For the sake of this example, I'm going to disable the background music. And you'll notice that with the growl is currently blocked because it's set to 0. That's intended. That's exactly what I intended this to do. So I'm going to increase the volume level to 0.5 or greater, and you'll notice that it goes away. So if I go back to have it being blocked, I'm going to walk over to where the rock monster is, and the rock monster is actually veered away a little bit, so I'll just try and see if I can get up to it. And nothing. Not going to hear a single thing. But if I increase the anger level, you can start to hear the growl again. This is awesome because now I can change this value globally, and depending on if I've angered a bunch of them, I can just increase this to above 50% and you'll start to hear growling. So in my project, I've also got some agents that are following waypoints, and when you get close to them, they get alerted and they start following you. When this happens, I want to make sure that an action sequence plays, which sounds just like this. So obviously I'm also going to have to block the other one as well in the process. And I want to show you how to set up events to do this. So events are a separate tab that come with ambient sounds that allows you to set up a specific text, which is your event, and you can assign a sequence to run when those events are happening. For example, the nature action sequence is going to be playing once the combat event has been triggered. And the nature is being blocked once this event has been triggered. That's exactly the intended purpose that I want, but I want to show you how to recreate this with our sequences and not the demo sequence. So in order to set this up, I'm going to use the action sequence to set up the event. You can either click and drag it into the sequence in order to create the event, or you can go to the requirements and set it up here directly like we've done before. Instead of calling this combat, I'm going to call this alert. That way, when the alert event happens, this sequence will run because it's set to all. Next, I'm going to look at the nature sequence and I'm going to get the event to be alert as well. However, I'm going to set the event mix to none, which means that it's going to turn it off or block the sequence when the alert trigger is happening. So essentially the opposite of the other one. Cool. So now that we have our event set up, we need to set up a script that's going to activate this event. And the way I'm going to do that is by going to my scripts folder, and I have a folder called sounds. I'm going to create a script called sound event here. Inside of sound event, I'm going to have to use the namespace of ambient sounds. The reason I'm using this namespace is so that I can access ambience manager .activate event and give it an event name. The event name was called alert, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So upon starting the game, we should activate this event. And the way this is going to work is I'm going to attach this script to my AI, which is my mushroom monster. And let's give that a test. So straight away in the monitor, you can see that the event alert has been set off, which is blocking the nature sequence. The other sequence isn't playing, but let's take a look at the events tab and see what's going on. So currently the alert trigger has been set off, but the action sequence is not running. So the reason why the action sequence wasn't running is because if you remembered, we have to attach it as a global sequence or else it won't play. So let's go ahead and add it as a sequence. And try that again. Straight away you'll notice in the monitor that the action sequence is indeed playing. You can test removing the alert, and you can see that it's transitioning back over to the other sequence. So I have this functionality set up where if my AI gets alerted, it'll run an event, an onAlerted event. It'll also run another function called onForgotten when you escape its range. So the way that I'm going to get this to work is I need it to call a function inside of sound event that will run those events. So let's go to the script. Instead of having it in start, I'm going to have a public method, which is going to be called alert. And it's going to run the alert event. I'm also going to have another function, which is called public void forgotten. And that is going to deactivate this event. And there we go. I just need to run these functions. So with my events that I've got set up, I'm going to add a new event on alert, which is to call the function inside that script sound event called alert. And then I'm going to do the opposite once the character has been forgotten. And it should deactivate the event. And then I'm going to apply the prefab to apply it to all of the other agents. Let's test this. So when I walk over to my agents, I'm going to try and get alerted. And the alert event has triggered off. And now the action sequence is playing. If I walk away from the agent's view, the agent has forgotten about me and the event has not been triggered anymore. So in this video, we've created some really simple yet really powerful interactive soundscapes in our environment. And we've done this with very minimal coding. We've also learnt about what a sequence is and how to use sequences with modifiers in our game and tie requirements to it using values and events. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.